Hey guys, so I thought I would do something a little bit different here on this channel, something to kind of challenge me to grow as an artist and render things I normally don't render. And one of the great ways to improve as an artist is to work from reference, specifically real-world physical object references. So what I'm going to do today is I'm heading off to Goodwill. I'm going to find something weird, something like a brass monkey or like a glass parrot or a silver bulldog, you know, just something like an unusual material and then an unusual shape. And then my goal in October is to create either a watercolor study or an alcohol marker study of that object. And then I'm going to donate the object back to Goodwill because my goal isn't to acquire more stuff. My goal is to, you know, practice and hone my skills and improve as an artist. And I wanted to share that with you guys. And hopefully we can make it kind of like a monthly challenge where we challenge ourselves to go out there, find something new to draw it, and then release it back into the wild. So come on, let's go to Goodwill. Okay, art nerds, it's actually the day after I recorded that intro segment. I ran out of time after going to Michael's yesterday. So today, we actually hit two different Goodwills. We hit one in Metairie and then we hit one in Old Metairie. And the one in Old Metairie was really cool. You guys can see from the segment, it was more of a boutique. Whereas the one in, I guess, regular Metairie was also pretty cool. I ended up buying that large cedar chest you guys saw. My mom and I are going to refinish it. And I also found some additional goodies that I hadn't even been planning on getting. So let me show you what I got, and then let me show you what our mystery item that I'm going to practice drawing this month is. Alright, so here we have our Goodwill mystery bag of holding. It holds loot from two different Goodwills. So, first off, we have half a set. There were originally 13 of these, but these are
hammered or pressed aluminum, and my mom has the other half of this set. She collects this, and I have a feeling I'm going to be inheriting her collection afterwards. But since we're renting and a lot of the furniture in this house is nice wood and not ours, coasters have become increasingly important. And these are kind of cool because even though they're non-absorbent, they do have a bit of a lip so they can hold liquids. Oh, this bag is just the gift that keeps on giving. Anyway, it's got a duck pattern. And then have to be careful in wrapping these things. Hopefully they didn't break. She did kind of, the girl at Goodwill did kind of a crummy job wrapping them. Some cut glass, which would be interesting and very challenging to draw in and of itself. And then she really just piled these in here. Some demi-tasse cups, since I collect demi-tasse cups, and when I was 12 I was gifted a collection of antique ones, and I wanted to kind of keep it up, so every time I go to like thrift stores and antique stores I do look, and they had a bunch of different ones. So not only do I have the cups, but for some of these I have the saucers. Couple more cut glass cups, and while they had a full collection of, I think, this one, I wanted to get different patterns just to kind of represent them. I kind of like how the light hits the glass as well. And then we have, not a fan of how these were wrapped. Don't mind the paper, I just wish they hadn't been wrapped together. The saucers for some of the demi-tasse cups. And of course all of this needs to be washed before, you know, it's put away. And you guys might have seen some of my demi-tasse cup collection in some of my, wow, which one goes with this? I think it's this one. In some of my like stream videos or streams where we're like celebrating XYZ for 7-inch Cara. So a lot of glass and porcelain. And on that note, our object d'art for this month. Now keep in mind, I wasn't searching for something necessarily fancy or expensive. I wasn't looking for some rare treasure. We certainly looked at a lot of really tacky tchotchkes that would have been fun to draw. But I ended up getting, and you can actually see me in my rainbow short shirt glory in this. We ended up getting this. And what I like about this, it's silver plated, but I love the rainbow patina and the interesting burnishing that's on this. So I'm not even going to try to clean it up because that's what I want to capture, is this interesting kind of duochrome patina. So this is the object I'm going to be studying and practicing this month. It certainly lends itself to watercolor, but it would be interesting to try doing this in marker as well. So this month's Goodwill Hunting brought a really interesting assortment of stuff. Goodwill has certainly come a long way since when I was a kid, and you can find some really cool stuff there. Now, it is more expensive than, you know, it used to be. Like, I paid about $140 for that cedar chest that I need to refinish. And part of that is because Goodwill has a website, and you can oh look, you can see me. Hi guys! You can competitively bid on their website. And also that, you know, people are able to look up what things are worth online. And I'm sure the really rare stuff doesn't even end up in a Goodwill store. It ends up sold online on auction. But it all goes to a good cause. And I still found some really cool stuff that I'm happy with. So, if it is safe in your area to do so, heading out to a Goodwill and checking out what they have might be well worth your time. Alright, art nerds, I hope you've got your pencils, your paints, and your paper ready, because we're finally ready to paint our September object d'art, which you guys see here. You can also see me and my camera rig if you look closely. And as I mentioned earlier, what really drew me to this object was actually the beautiful rainbow colored tarnishing. I thought it would be fun to try and capture that in either watercolor or marker. So the goal with this exercise is to find an unusual object at Goodwill, something made of a material that I don't draw or paint often, and then try to recreate it in either watercolor or marker, or maybe even pencil color. So you guys will have to keep an eye out to see what October's object art is going to be. So enough preamble, let's get cracking. So the materials for September's object art are fluid 100 watercolor paper. Now ideally I would be working with something with even more texture than this, since we've got such beautiful gradations on our object, but I definitely wanted to work on a cotton rag watercolor paper today, and I figured this is a good size to start. We may end up working larger, we may work smaller in the future, but it's really about finding the right match for the object. I also have my handy dandy trusty dusty mechanical pencil. It's a Pentel Icy, and it's about time to replace it. So, you know, that makes my mechanical pencil reviews even more pertinent right now, since I'm looking at new pencils for myself. And then finally, we have my daily driver watercolor palette, oft mentioned, rarely fully shown. And it looks gnarly, but that's okay. It's got the paint to get the job done, and that's really what's most important. So I want to capture my object at a specific angle. So I don't have any putty, but I do have very stretchy gum eraser. Good gravies. So what I'm going to do is I have an old glass yogurt pot. Usually it holds my pipettes for watercolor, but what I'm going to do is, I wish this was a little stickier, but we're going to make a stand, and that will allow us to place our object. There we go. And then I'll put a little bit under each foot just to kind of hold it in place. Now what I want is, I really want to practice a variety of things. I also want to capture some of, let's see if I can achieve that. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. And I only mention this because, you know, when we're drawing from life, when we're drawing a still life, that's all well and good, but we do tend to draw the same sort of viewpoint over and over and over again. And part of this exercise is to draw now which one do I want? To draw something a little unusual and to try and capture it. That's going to work quite well. Try to capture it from an angle we might not have drawn a million times. Let me fix that there. Okay. Now what would be even better might be a box propped up with like some gel beads in it, and you can just into it, but I don't have that. So this worked quite well considering it was done on a budget of already got it. So the point of this exercise is just to practice seeing things, practice drawing things, and practice interpreting things in different ways. So it can be as formal an exercise or as informal an exercise as you'd like. You can draw your object as many times as you want, and it's really not, I'm not going to tell you how to go about it, and so in the time lapse I'm not really going to explain what I'm doing, because what my goal is for you guys to analyze what I'm doing and try to understand why I'm doing it, and then see if you can apply that to your own studies. Watching time lapses, watching and interpreting how other artists work is a great way to learn and a great way to develop your own style and your own skills. And just to give you guys kind of an idea of what I'm seeing, we have the camera at about my eye level, so this will give you guys an idea of how I'm seeing this object as we're doing this. Maybe in later iterations of this I can have a dual camera system where you guys can work along with me. If you would like to, I will include a link to a photo of this down in the description below. But I encourage you to go out and find your own art objects. So for this study, instead of having my usual multi-weld mixing palette or doing my mixing on the Teflon surface of my desk, I grabbed a small ceramic mixing bowl. This is great for smaller sort of self-contained studies like this one here. And it also allows the colors to kind of gently mix as you paint, which for a subject like this is actually quite beneficial. If you're painting along at home, you can head down to like Dollar Tree and buy a white ceramic plate, and it'll basically serve the same purpose, and it's way cheaper than going to like an art supply store and buying ceramic palettes. One of the reasons I use so many plastic palettes in my videos is just because they're harder to break, and I travel a lot, or I used to travel a lot, and being able to bring my palettes with me was important. But now that we've kind of settled down and we've moved somewhere more permanent, I think I'm going to be moving more towards ceramic palettes in the future. So for this study, I started with a sketch, and I definitely could have worked harder to be more precise, and that may be something I work towards more in the future. However, this is a fairly simple shape. The handle was really the only detailed and complicated part, and what I really wanted to focus with this study was the motley of colors on the patina rather than perfectly rendering a shape. I used a small camera mount beneath my pad of watercolor to just prop it up a little bit. This allows the paints to settle a little bit better, and it allows me to see what I'm doing a little bit better. The Fluid 100 watercolor paper worked really nicely for this study. It stayed wet long enough that I was able to get some really nice wet into wet blends, but it didn't stay wet so long that I had to let it dry overnight, which might have happened with other watercolor papers. I would have liked something with a little bit more texture so that I could have possibly captured more of the speckling of the paper. This paper has a very fine texture for a cold press paper, but other than that, I really can't complain. I've used Fluid 100 several times in the past. It's what I use for most of my watercolor field tests, and most of my watercolor unbox and swatches, since it is a cotton rag paper. And I do have a field test of the paper here on the channel if you're curious about it. But it's quite an affordable, accessible cotton rag watercolor paper that I would recommend to anyone who would like to try cotton rag paper that behaves well on a bit of a budget. I'm painting with the largest brush I can comfortably use, and this is because it kind of forces me away from tight, kind of mealy mouth brush strokes. It forces me to be more expressive, and it also forces me to be a little bit more considerate of the strokes and the marks I'm making. Not only that, but it does hold more water and it holds more paint, which makes it work quite well for the wet into wet I'm trying to achieve here. So I found that by starting with a wash that includes a lot of our colors and then painting over it, I was able to create this undertone that really captures the patina quite well. And then while higher layers, upper layers, subsequent layers, That's the word I'm looking for. While subsequent layers are still wet, I can dab in other colors, and that gives us kind of this rich color. I primarily used just 4 colors for this. I used Payne's Gray, I used a bit of Holbein's Neutral Tint, I used a bit of Naphthalide Maroon, I used a little bit of Dioxine Violet or Dioxine Purple because it tends to be a very intense color, and I used a bit of Daniel Smith's older Quin Gold, as well as a little bit of indigo just to add some of the cooler blue highlights. Now initially at the beginning I'd masked off some areas for highlight to kind of reserve them, and even though they look kind of bulky and heavy-handed right now, this allows me to go in and paint in tighter, more refined details. And I'm using what's known as a masking fluid pickup or a masking fluid frisket to remove my masking fluid. I know some artists use their finger. I've never really had much luck with that. These are quite affordable, and you can even find them at hobby shops because they're frequently used to pick up rubber cement as well. So you can see masking off and reserving some of those areas created islands that I can now kind of go in and paint a bit tighter, or I can go in with brighter colors, better capturing the highlight on the picture itself. And then finally, when everything's just about finished, I go in with a much smaller watercolor brush and I just add in some of the darker details. I'm dual wielding brushes right now. I have one brush loaded with clean water and another loaded with paint so that I can soften some of the edges here and there and better try to capture that metallic look. My picture looked quite unfinished, just sitting there white on the paper, so I decided to blot in a bit of a background using the colors from the picture itself. So my goal was to emulate and reflect the colors but not match them perfectly, and I didn't want it to become too repetitive. So what I tried to do was I tried to kind of sync opposites and allow the paper to kind of take the paint where I wanted to go. So I soaked the paper with a lot of water and really encouraged these diffuse, uncontrolled wet into wet blends and a bit of bleed back and a bit of spidering and just general uncontrolled watercolor techniques just to add some visual interest while also creating a bit of a background. Alright guys, so that is our completed object dart study of this. Stuck in real good there, didn't it? This silver, probably silver coated, honestly. It's probably not real silver, not for $3 at Goodwill. It's not real silver. But this silvery little picture here. I think it'd be fun to also do a study of this in marker and really try to break up those marker strokes as much as possible. But I feel like I learned a lot. The goal isn't perfection. The goal isn't 100% realism. The goal is to just once a month study something that you would normally not draw or paint or have access to and try to recreate it in one of the chosen art forms. So, but you know, the more I look at it, the more I'm like, oh, I want to do it again. So we'll see. Anyway, I hope you guys will keep an eye out for the October Goodwill hunting, where we head out to Goodwill and we find an object of interest, and the October object dart, where we take our object of interest and learn from it, make some art from it, study from it. So with this piece, I really wanted to pay attention to the metallic nature of this cup. Practice with metallics, practice metallics from reference. I didn't want to actually paint myself in the reflection. I could see myself in the reflection, but that felt a little invasive, frankly. Maybe that's just in my head, but I didn't want to get that realistic. But what I really wanted to study was how we have this sort of rainbow-hued iridescence on the picture itself, and I wanted to try to capture that rainbow hue in the cup as well as the metallic quality of it. And I also wanted to work pretty loose. You guys saw me working with a very large, somewhat difficult to control watercolor brush for the majority of this painting, and I only went in with a finer brush later on to add in details. And then I also wanted to have a loose background that complemented the picture without detracting from it too much. Now, I could go in with whitewash and slap in some white highlights. There's definitely some areas where we could really benefit from some white highlights, and a tighter drawing of the picture itself would also probably have been beneficial. But, you know, that's just self-critique. It's stuff to keep in mind next time, areas that I might want to improve on next time, so that when we do this again in October, we can produce a better piece. Because the whole point of this is study and improvement and learning new skills and stretching our abilities and getting out of our comfort zone. So I look forward to whatever random stuff Goodwill brings into my life in October. And I hope you guys enjoyed this exercise, and I hope you guys will try it out yourselves. If you do, I'd love to see what you make. Pop a link in the comments below, or you can, I guess, tag me on Instagram. I'm more likely to see it if you tag me on Instagram than if you send it to me in an Instagram message. So that would be the best way to do it, because then I can just swipe over and check it out. This was a fun way to spend an evening. It could be a great way to kind of build up your skill set and also maybe create some pieces for your portfolio depending on what line of art you want to go into. And I hope to see you guys again really soon with next month's Goodwill Hunting and Object Art. So I'm Becca Hilburn. I hope this was helpful, useful, and informative, and I hope to see you guys again really soon. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye! So in the future, would you guys prefer that I separate the Goodwill Hunting video from the Object Art study, or do you like them in one video? Let me know before October. I'm already planning my October Goodwill trip, although I'm definitely not planning what I'll paint, since that's a lot of the joy of going out to Goodwill and seeing what strikes my fancy. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's fun working on new things for my sketchbook, and hopefully I'll see you guys again soon. Bye guys!